Hey everybody, how you doing? Well, that's good. You're listening to an emergency PHLY Flyers. My name is Bill Matz. I'm your therapist for the evening. Joining me, as always, my accredited, esteemed colleague, Charlie O'Connor. And well, if you're wondering why we're joining you just like, an hour or so before postgame, Cutter Gauthier has been traded. That's right, 2022 fifth overall pick. Cutter Gauthier, the man who just led Team USA to a World Juniors Championship with 12 points in 7 games, is now an Anaheim Duck coming back to Philadelphia. Sixth overall pick from 2020, Jamie Drysdale, a right-handed defenseman who will be 22 in a couple of months. Danny Briere, this story broke, I guess, after the game began. It seems like the puck had already dropped when I started seeing these reports. Danny Briere met with the media following the first period. It is now in between the second and third. Charlie O'Connor is with us. And Chuck, I guess, let's start with the timeline. What was the timeline of things? Because it seems as if all of the rumors that we heard going back to the end of last season, they're kind of coming to fruition here in terms of what I heard Danny Briere say. What was the timeline of Cutter ultimately telling the team he ain't going to be here?
Well, according to Danny Briere, and we obviously spoke with him at the first intermission, they first heard from Gauthier that he did not want to be a Flyer after the World Championships last year. He played quite well in the World Championships, and that was the first time they had heard from Gauthier that he didn't want to be a Flyer. That said, they did not necessarily think that was the end of it. We're talking about an 18, 19-year-old kid, and their thought process was he might change his mind. However, they were, from that moment on, open to the possibility of moving him. I can confirm, I tweeted this out a few minutes ago. They did quietly shop him at a draft last year. This was actually a really interesting. It was one thing about the NHL draft when you're there is if you're just chatting with people, some pretty crazy rumors fly around, and they're more just things you file away. And it's like, oh, that's interesting, but not necessarily anything where you're going to run with it because it's basically just like industry gossip. And one thing I had heard was that the Flyers had offered Gauthier to Montreal for the 5th overall pick. And basically what the idea was that they'll draft Reinbacher. They knew that Arizona would not be able to take Michkov, and then they would get Michkov with the 7th overall pick. So they basically turned Gauthier into Reinbacher and then get Michkov at 7, because the only team they were worried about taking Michkov before them was Montreal. So it was like kill two birds with one stone. We make sure we get Michkov, and we swap Gauthier for another top 5 caliber prospect at Reinbacher. Montreal said no. Then, obviously, the next week, Gauthier doesn't show up to development camp. The Flyers downplay it. I remember I reached out to Cutter Gauthier's camp after that, and they were very evasive. So, basically saying, like, we don't talk about guys when they're not signed yet. Sorry. And that was it. It was like, okay, well, if you wanted to give me a he loves Philly, he's just tired answer, that would have been great, but clearly they didn't want to, because clearly I guess there was more to the story. And then apparently they took one more shot at him in Sweden at the World Juniors. And according to Danny, this is actually something I heard earlier today. I had heard this rumor. It wasn't even a rumor. It was from a source, but not a source that I would run with as the only source. That basically Briere, Jones, and Patrick Sharp were in Sweden, and Gauthier's family would not meet with them. So that hey, there could be something up here. Gauthier camp did not give the Flyers a chance to make their final case. I guess once they got snubbed in Sweden, it was like, all right, We can't keep waiting for him to change his mind. We have to make a move. And then today they made a move.
We've I guess we heard the rumors, and that was the thing coming out of the World Championships when he didn't show up to the one camp. It was like, well, the dude's played a lot of hockey. He was at World Juniors. He played a full college season, and then he went to World Championships. He doesn't necessarily need to be there, this and that. But there were always the, I guess, rumblings that, and how founded they were or not, is he gonna actually want to come here? And there was a lot of back and forth, and it was ultimately like, the guy just seems maybe a little tired. But I do credit the Flyers for being able to keep this thing kind of under wraps as they have been, and getting what I deem a fairly decent return, considering it's known that the kid doesn't want to be here. But man, that just seems like listen, I'm unhappy about this, and I'm gonna boo Cutter Gauthier for the rest of his career like he's JD Drew, absolutely. But this is his right to say, I'm not gonna sign there. That's fine. That's on him. But to not meet with the team just seems wild. Like, refuse to meet with the team that drafted you when they're in Sweden. Like, yeah, the Flyers had a couple of guys there, but let's face it, you're the reason they're there.
They're there for him.
That seems wildly immature.
I mean, I guess all I can say is that he must have really, really made up his mind that he did not want to be a Flyer. We asked Danny Briere, obviously, do you know why he didn't want to join the Flyers? And Danny basically said, we were never told. We were never given a reason. It was just, I don't want to be a Flyer. Now, could the Flyers have played this differently? Could they have said, you know what, we're going to call your bluff, and we're going to say that there's no way you're going to stay in college for 4 years and take the injury risk, and you will ultimately come and sign with us eventually? Yeah, they could have done that. The risk there, though, and this is a legitimate risk. Look, you're seeing all of the vitriol that's out on Cutter Gauthier right now. This was bubbling. The Flyers obviously had talks with front offices where they told them, hey, this is why you don't think Cutter Gauthier necessarily wants to play for us, so we're looking to potentially move him. The risk was, if this does come out, then suddenly there's no going back from there. Once it becomes clear that Cutter Gauthier doesn't want to come to Philadelphia, then you can't put the genie back in the bottle. It's not like he can change his mind 2 years down the road and say, no, I decided to be a Flyer, because there will be a lot of fans who are never going to forgive him for snubbing the city the first time. So, yes, they could have played differently. They could have called his bluff and said, there's no way that you're going to wait out 4 years just because you so badly don't want to be in Philly. But the risk there is that then what if that is the case, and then you end up getting absolutely nothing back for him? At least in this situation, and again, I tweeted this out, a lot of this is going to depend on Jamie Drysdale now, because by trading Cutter Gauthier, you've traded away a blue chip likely to be a first line. Now, whether he's a center or a winger was the debate. We'll see how that ultimately plays out. But you're trading away a blue chip first line forward. If in return you get back a blue chip first pair defenseman, this isn't that big of a deal, because then you've got, even if Gauthier would have panned out, you still would have had to go out and find that number one defenseman. We've been talking about it on the show pretty much since it began. I don't know if Jamie Drysdale is that. The Flyers appear confident that they can turn Jamie Drysdale into a legitimate top pair, if not a number one defenseman. I haven't watched him enough since he's been drafted to have an opinion on whether that's possible. I know he missed most of last year with a torn labrum. I know he played a ton of minutes the year before for them, but he didn't exactly do great in those minutes. But again, he was a young teenager. We'll see. And I do also know that they have a lot of confidence in John Tortorella and Brad Shaw in particular to develop defensemen after what they've seen them do with Travis Sanheim, with Rasmus Ristolainen, with Sean Walker. They believe that they have a coaching staff that can get the most out of Jamie Drysdale. If Jamie Drysdale is the number one defenseman they need, all this really does is just change the need. Because we all knew, hey, they had to get a 1C, they had to get a 1D. You're assuming Mitchkov's your superstar winger. If Drysdale is the 1D, now you just need to get the 1C. Not that that's easy, but getting a 1D isn't easy either. So if that's the way it plays out, this might ultimately work out decently for the Flyers. In the here and now, though, it feels devastating because everyone was so excited about Gauthier. Obviously, he had the big World Juniors, and he had that possibility of being that first-line impact center, and now he's gone.
Yeah, the timing of this is what is most devastating to me. Like, the more I keep hearing about his game and everything. Like, I'm not convinced Cutter Gauthier is going to be what I think Michkov is going to be. Like, but I think he's going to be a really good player. It's just the timing of this, the excitement that we had coming out of that World Juniors, where he was one of the best players in the tournament. He's named the top forward in the tournament. USA wins the gold. This is very, very painful. He is setting himself up to be, and listen, right now he's in Anaheim. They're going to play him twice a year. It's not a big deal. But we're going to find out, I think, at some point if he has an actual destination in mind, the way Adam Fox did, where he was just like, I ain't playing for anyone but the Rangers, so good luck. And he got traded a few times before he ultimately signed. Or if it's just like, I did not want to be a Flyer, and that would obviously be a lot worse. I want to know, though, like, he's clearly setting himself up to be a villain. Man, every comment I'm seeing right now is like, this was Kevin Hayes. I know you don't have information about that, but we've talked about his BC connection before. This is a player that I really, really liked. Kevin Hayes is going to catch some strays here now, no?
I mean, look, let me put it this way. If Cutter Gauthier turned on the Flyers because, and I'm not saying this is what happened because I truly don't know. If Cutter Gauthier turned on the Flyers organization because Kevin Hayes said some mean things about the Flyers to him, like, honestly, that's more on Cutter Gauthier than Kevin Hayes, because Kevin Hayes had every right to be a little bit ticked off with how he got treated. And if that's really why Cutter Gauthier got annoyed with the Flyers, like, I hate to say this, but, like, grow up, kid.
I absolutely agree, Charlie. We're going to talk plenty after post-game. I just have to know, like, when you heard this news, what was your reaction? And right away, you were like, oh, my God, or, ooh, saw this one coming. Like, what did you think right away?
Well, I mean, my first reaction was, God damn it, I wish I would have, been a little bit more on this, because I got that source report around like 3 p.m., I feel like, and it was like, oh, okay, that's interesting. Let me start chasing this down. And it was like, shit, I really should have just like called every single source I had trying to dig this up. So it was a little bit of regret on my part. Look, it's a bummer. I was really high on Cutter Gauthier, and I don't know that much about Jamie Drysdale since he was drafted. I liked him in his draft year. He's a really good skater. He's a right-handed shooting defenseman. At that time, I thought he had first pair, potentially number one defenseman upside. I just haven't watched him. Whereas for the last 2 years, I've watched and followed Cutter Gauthier very closely. So obviously, I'm going to be more excited about Cutter Gauthier, about seeing him play, because he's the guy I follow. Again, this all turns out okay for the Flyers if Jamie Drysdale is a really, really good defenseman. It's just I can't even have an opinion on that, because he's not someone I followed since that 2020 draft. Over the next few weeks, I mean, we're going to literally get to see Drysdale probably this week in a Flyers uniform, because he's already an NHL player. He's healthy. He's coming up. They're not sending him to Lehigh. He's coming up. And we're going to get a pretty good idea real quick as to whether Drysdale is someone that we should be excited about, or whether fans should, be skeptical that they can actually turn him into a guy worthy of trading away a 5th overall pick to get.
All right, Charlie, thank you for joining us. I hear Lou Nolan. That means the game's about to pick back up. So I will talk to you after the third period once you get done all your Capital J journalism stuff. We will have our regularly scheduled post-game. Charlie, that's it for now. And, folks, I just want to wrap up by saying, God damn it, man. God damn it. Jamie Drysdale might end up being really good. I believe in this kid from everything I heard about him this summer. I was following the Ducks situation pretty closely with Zegras and Drysdale and their work towards getting contracts. But right now, this really sucks. I'm going to try to gather my thoughts so we can have a post-game. We're not going to talk about the game a ton. I'm going to be honest with you. We're going to do a lot more of Cutter Gauthier and Jamie Drysdale unless this shit goes absolutely insane, which at the end of the second looked like it was a possibility. JP's going to be with me. We're going to have a good time after this. So tune in after the game tonight, right after the final buzzer for our post game. Until then, my name is Bill Matz. Let's go Flyers.